Organization and the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. My name is Natalia Lopez. I'm with Marketplace Excellence, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Today, we face a formidable challenge. An intense hurricane season has been forecasting, and we are experiencing the highest heat levels on record, presenting health threats to both employees and guests in our region. This webinar is designed to equip you with the knowledge and tools necessary to navigate these critical issues effectively. We're delighted to extend a warm invitation to all representatives from destinations and companies responsible for crisis readiness and response activities throughout the Caribbean region. Over the next hour, you will gain valuable insights and resources, including an in-depth analysis of the latest 2024 hurricane season forecast. We'll also be unveiling the cutting-edge crisis communications toolkit specifically tailored for the tourism industry. And lastly, we'll also talk about healthy safety tips and resources aimed at protecting your employees and guests during extreme weather conditions. Our lineup of speakers is here to provide you with essential information needed to enhance your preparedness and resilience in the face of these challenges. We'll first start with CTO Secretary-General Dona Regis-Prosper, with a special message from CTO Chairman, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, Minister of Tourism for the Cayman Islands. We'll also talk to CHTA President Nicola Madden-Greig. Then we'll talk about the hurricane and heat forecast with Dr. Cedric van Meerbeeck and Dr. Roché Mahon from the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology. We'll also talk about online resources and guidance by CTO and CHTA. So we'll welcome Frank Comito, advisor for CHTA and CAST, as well as Amanda Charles from CTO. Lastly, we'll also talk about healthy safety resources with Dr. Laura Lee Boodram from the head of vector-borne diseases at Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARFA. And lastly, we have Sajil Nassar, Digital Services from Marketplace Excellence, who will walk you through the Communications Online Toolkit. And if you have any questions, please hold them to the end. However, you can put them in the chat down here or in Q&A over here. So please be sure to use those tools, and we'll go through that at the end. So thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand it over to our CTO Secretary-General, Dona.
Good morning, Natalia. Thank you so much for this introduction, and good morning to my fellow panelists. And good morning to our listeners who've joined us here this morning for this very important exercise. I'd like to start by thanking the CHTA for this partnership as we get into this season, which is a very intense and emotional season for us here in the Caribbean. One of the things that's always reassuring is partnerships and collaboration. And another C that is very important is the communication aspect, especially if you've had the unfortunate experience as a destination to have your industry shut down by any natural disaster, including hurricanes, is that ability to communicate with our guests and also internally with our stakeholders. So I'd like to start by commending my team here at the CTO for their interventions in terms of putting this webinar together, and also our partnership with the Hotel and Tourism Association, the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. That being said, I'd like to introduce special remarks for our chairman, who is very passionate about this. He could not be here with us, unfortunately, but he has submitted a video which I would ask my team to play at this point.
My fellow Caribbean citizens, this is Kenneth Bryan, the chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization. I'm reaching out to you today with an important message about hurricane preparedness. The month of June marks the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, and the NOAA, or the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, is forecasting an 85% chance above normal levels of storm activity within our region. The predictions are for 17 to 25 named storms, 8 to 13 hurricanes, and 4 to 7 major hurricanes. As Caribbean islands, we have all faced devastating effects of hurricanes, tropical storms, and severe weather events. We understand more than anyone the importance of being prepared. This hurricane season, perhaps more than any other, it is vital that we all take the necessary steps to protect ourselves, our families, and our businesses and our communities. If you haven't done so already, stock up on your hurricane supplies and ensure you have a hurricane plan in place for your loved ones as well as your homes and businesses. Hurricane season is not a time for complacency. It only takes one storm to wreak havoc on our lives, destroy our infrastructure, and erode our economic prosperity. So please, don't wait for a storm to be on the horizon to do your hurricane preparedness. Do it now, because being prepared saves lives. In times of distress and natural disasters, our strength lies within our unity and our willingness to help each other. As we've seen time and time again, our resilience and preparedness are vastly improved when we are all for one and one for all. When one island is struck, we all feel the impact. And when one community rises, we all rise together. Let us embrace the spirit of solidarity and mutual support as we navigate the challenges of this hurricane season. My Caribbean brothers and sisters, let us stand united, as we always do, to face this hurricane season with vigilance, resilience, and readiness. Let us be our brother's keeper. Together, we can weather any storm that comes our way. On behalf of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, I wish everyone within the Caribbean diaspora a safe hurricane season. Be prepared, be safe, and remember, in unity there is strength. May God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll
Thank you.
turn it over to Nicola Madden-Greig, CHTA President. We can't hear you. I think it's your headset.
Hearing me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Technology for us this morning. Morning, everyone, and really thank you for having me joined. The message from Minister Bryan was just really exceptional in putting and setting the stage for what is going to be a very interesting session. And Donna and the CTO team, we thank you for everything you have done in preparing us for this moment. On behalf of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association and our sister organization, the Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism, crisis readiness webinar that we are today is probably the most important thing we can focus on as we go into this very, very, very strongly predicted hurricane season. We in the Caribbean are, of course, no strangers to crisis and collaboration. And it was over 25 years ago that CHTA, CTO, and the Organization of American States created the first Hurricane Preparedness Manual. Working with the OAS and CDEMA, the manual was the foundation for an extensive training effort to better prepare the region's public and private sector tourism stakeholders to plan for and recover quickly from crises like hurricanes. One could successfully make the point that our ability to plan, manage, and recover from crisis was put to its greatest test in the recent pandemic. And it is that ability to collaborate, to plan, and to be able to, as Minister said, be our brother's keepers that has helped us come through what is called a once-in-a-lifetime event. Hopefully, we'll never see another one. Through sound planning and collaboration, we have learned over these 25 years that the Caribbean is able to recover and rebound. And we did so during the pandemic at record levels, levels that were not predicted for us because it was felt that being one of the most tourism-dependent regions in the world, we would struggle the most. But it was our efforts, our collaborative efforts, our grit, our ability to overcome, probably the fact that we have been through so much crisis before that prepared us for that very day. And already for 2024, we are seeing growth well over our 2019 recorded levels, which was a record level for Caribbean tourism. Regionally and locally, at company levels through our local tourism boards, Ministry of Tourism and National Hotel and Tourism Associations, we continue to hone our skills to ensure that we are prepared for the range and types and crises we face to respond quickly, effectively, to the circumstances which present themselves. And once again, at what is predicted to be a very intense hurricane season, we come together to remind ourselves of the fundamental practices we must put in place, reconnect with our local partners, look at our resources, ensure that we are ready individually as well as business. The record rise in temperatures we have already felt for this year is a wake-up call, as this impacts not only on our business, but on our individuals in terms of both our health and livelihoods. It is impacting our agricultural sector, which is integral to ongoing food security. We must therefore seek to understand the myriad of challenges we face and prepare and equip ourselves and our businesses to mitigate, prevent, and most importantly, respond. Armed with added insights by forecasters like CTO and CHTA partners, the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, and the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARFO, who are joining us today, we hope that upon leaving today's session, we have a greater understanding of those factors that can help to support minimizing the damage to lives and livelihoods and to help us rebound from any situation as quickly as possible. Our motivation must be ensure that whatever situation we face, we can ensure little to no business closures, protect thousands of tourism-related jobs, minimize the impact on business and government revenues, and quickly restore consumer confidence in traveling to the Caribbean. We cannot rest on our laurels of our past successes. Rather, we must renew our resolve to continue to improve our readiness and response efforts. In that regard, CTO, CHTA, and CARFO are pleased to introduce today's new communication tools to support this effort. And we urge you to draw upon additional resources to support your planning, which will be shared with you today by the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, as well as CARFO. We thank you for participating in today's sessions and for your commitment to ensuring the health and safety of our guests and employees, protecting livelihoods, families, and most importantly, communities. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Next up, we have Dr. Cedric van Meerbeeck, our climatologist, and Dr. Roché Mahon, who are going to present Climate Outlook for 2024, a year of climate extremes.
Okay, just checking if my volume comes through well enough and that you can see the screen that I'm sharing.
Yes, we can see the screen. If you want to go into presentation mode, you're fine, and we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today in this preparedness and readiness webinar, because indeed, as you've heard from Honorable Minister and from our colleagues heading the CTO and the CHTA, it's not going to be an easy year in terms of climate. And so what we can do is to really be well prepared, to be able to respond adequately and to mitigate any problems that we might still be able to do through good preparedness strategies and plans. So I have the pleasure to present this presentation on behalf of the Caribbean Climate Outlook Forum, which bundles together all the countries that you see the flags of here and their meteorological services specifically, as well as the CIMH, whose principal and staff I am happy to bring the greetings of. This presentation is based on the deliberations of the Caribbean Climate Outlook Forum when it met at the end of last month in Guyana. And so what you will see is the flavors of the upcoming season. Now, as we've heard, the hurricane season, the Atlantic hurricane season, obviously we know it starts on the 1st of June and it officially ends on the 30th of November. But what else is out there that we need to be prepared for? And so most of us have heard or are very familiar with the fact that we have a dry season and a wet season in the Bahamas, in Belize, in the Greater and the Lesser Antilles. And what we also know is that, especially since last year when record heat started in June and continues on today, we actually have a heat season. And so what you see here on this graphic is the months going from January to December and delineating, depending on where exactly you are situated, the length of the hurricane season, the wet season, the dry season, and the heat season. One of the things that we then need to ask ourselves is, okay, we know more or less when we get most hurricanes, which is typically around mid-August to mid-October. We know that our wet season starts at different moments in time in different parts of the region, but we didn't really know just how that translates into the frequency and intensity of our hazards when it comes to other hazards than hurricanes. And so I would like to present here a calendar of 9 categories of hazards that are climate related as they become more and less intense, more and less frequent throughout the months of the year. And the message here is, yes, it is critical that we are ready for the hurricane season, but keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that hazards can and do occur outside of that season. Just look, for instance, at the category called excessive dryness. That's when it comes to drought, and that's when it comes to frequent dry spells. And how that translates into fire weather, because more and more often we get those warm temperatures and that dryness that makes the fuel.
Cedric, I think you went on mute. Cedric, can you hear us?
Yeah,
Okay, now we can hear you. For some reason, it's going in and out.
I can, but I keep on being muted by somebody. I'm not sure who does that. I don't know if it's because my connection is not very good, but can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, my apologies for that. So what I was suggesting is the importance of this calendar of climate hazards here is that we should not rest assured that there will not be any hazards outside the hurricane season. Just look at dryness, just look at fire weather, just look at excessive heat, just look at Saharan dust intrusions. All of those things, including surging at our shorelines, can and does happen outside the hurricane season. But as we have entered the hurricane season, we need to focus in particular on heat, on tropical cyclone activity, on flooding, on coastal flooding, and as we go on with the year, also on coral reef bleaching, unfortunately. So that is what I want to focus the discussion on in the next few slides. So we've seen now the calendar of when the hurricane season is, when the heat season is, when the dry and the wet seasons are. But what is different this year compared to a regular year? And so to elucidate how it's a bit different, I plotted here a map that shows where we had record warmest temperatures at the surface of the ocean or at surface on land throughout the month of April. And the picture is very similar for the month of May. You can see, if you look at the Caribbean region and North and South America, the tropical Atlantic Ocean has been record warm now for many months on end. That is one thing that will influence the climate in the next few months. The other thing that influences us a lot is the temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. You can see a lighter shade of red in the tropical Pacific, which was reflecting a El Nino event, which is now fading and will be likely replaced by a La Nina event, a cold counterpart, so colder than usual surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. But the record warm temperatures in the Atlantic are expected to continue. And so with this transition from an El Nino to a La Nina, combined with record warm tropical Atlantic temperatures, we have a very good grip on what our climate will look like in the next few months. Except that there's one thing we can't forecast on a time scale of several months, and that is how often intrusions of dry and dusty Saharan air will come into the region, into the Caribbean, and will stifle shower activity, thunderstorm activity, and tropical cyclone activity. So just to give you an impression of what such a dust intrusion looks like, the redder the color, the denser the dust, and the drier the air inside. Now these intrusions have very strong effects on the atmosphere and therefore on our climate conditions. And because we're not able to forecast them explicitly, we can't put them in models at this time. What we're gonna do is present two scenarios here. One scenario, which is the scenario we can forecast and does not really factor in the dust, is called scenario A. In that case, we just assume that there will not be very frequent dust events. Scenario B, on the other hand, is with very frequent dust events on top of scenario A. And so what are the effects of scenario A and B on the next few months? That's what we're going to focus on now, so that you get a better appreciation of the kind of hazards that we will need to prepare for. So in scenario A, remember, that's with infrequent Saharan dust intrusions. What we're seeing here, I plotted here April to December. I know we're at the beginning of June, but it's always a good thing to remember what happened recently. So we've faced excessive heat in Barbados, for instance. At the CIMH, we actually recorded the warmest month ever recorded in the month of May. And that's just the beginning of the heat season. So that is why we really want to look after our population, especially those in situations of vulnerability as they face this intense heat season this year. So we can expect considerably higher than usual nighttime and daytime temperatures with frequent and persistent and intense heat waves, unfortunately. And if you look at the oceans, well, you can also have what are called marine heat waves, which then can trigger mass coral bleaching events in the ocean and in the, around our islands. So this is unfortunately something that we will have to look at. Now, in case there were very frequent Saharan dust intrusions, you can see that the color has become brighter for the heat season. That means that heat will be even more intense, with potentially record-breaking humid heat. And in the ocean, a prolonged duration of intense marine heat waves, which makes the situation more dire for our coral reef communities. So that's concerning heat. Let's focus on extreme rainfall and how that will impact on flooding. So what we're seeing is a potentially explosive start of the wet season in May. Okay, we're in June now. In some areas, and what we expect is to see high to extremely high potential for flooding, flash floods, hazards that cascade from those hazards, and impacts that result from them. And that is everywhere around the region, except in Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, the ABC Islands. Also, keep in mind that if you get more frequent showers, you also have environmental conditions that are conducive to moisture-related pests and molds, for instance. If, however, there's going to be very frequent Saharan dust intrusions, that Saharan dust tends to dry out the atmosphere in the early part of the wet season, and you can see less intense colors up until the month of August, which means that we're going to see more erratic but intense wet spells through the month of July and early August, instead of an onslaught of many, many rainfall events. As you can see, scenario A and scenario B are quite different here up until the month of August. And after August, the influence of the dust will really reduce. And why am I stressing that? Because if we look at tropical cyclone activity in our scenario A, with not too many of those events, we get a hyperactive hurricane season with a very active first half of the season. Now, you would have heard ministers speaking about the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's forecast for the season, suggesting up to 23 named storms, up to 13 hurricanes, and up to 7 major hurricanes. Well, that is one agency, one lead agency that is very good at predicting the tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic hurricane season. We bundled all of those forecasts from different agencies, and overall there's a consensus of very dire numbers here: 23 to 29 storms, 11 to 13 hurricanes, and 5 to 7 major hurricanes. That's where the different forecasts are converging. In addition, the Colorado State University forecast, or what some of you might remember as the Bill Gray forecast, suggests 2/3 chance of at least one major hurricane tracking through the Caribbean. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is really what we need to be most prepared for in terms of the hurricane season. In addition, CIMH also makes forecasts of parts of the season so that you know which parts we need to prepare for most. And as you can see, in the first half of the season, we expect slightly lower numbers than in the second half. And if there tends to be, if in the end we get a lot of Saharan dust intrusions, what you see is that the first half of the season looks less bright colored, which means muted and more erratic tropical cyclone activity before the middle of August, before the peak of the season. So what we're expecting here is that the dust will not affect us in the second half of the season in terms of muting the tropical cyclone activity or reducing its frequency and intensity, but it might still help us to give us a little more time to be prepared for that peak of the season in mid-August to mid-October. So with that, I will leave Dr. Roché Mahon to present this slide. Roché, please go ahead.
Thank you, Cedric and colleagues. I just want to highlight the opportunity that you have to access the Caribbean Tourism Climatic. You see a picture of the upcoming June, July, August 2024 issue on your screen. The Caribbean Tourism Climatic Bulletin, TCB, which is what we call it for short, is a climate smart tool that is co-produced by the CTO, the CHTA, and CIMH every 3 months, so that you will have the climate information that you need to better manage climate risk, as well as capture any climate opportunities that may be happening in the next 3 to 6 months. This, of course, is valuable information that can help you to plan, manage your operational revenue, your operational expenses better, because as you saw from Cedric's presentation, you will likely have to plan for a number of climate-related demands in the next 3 to 6 months, such as increased cooling and maintenance costs this year. So in the Caribbean TCB, we provide you with early warning of all those scenarios. And best of all, colleagues, we offer you this information free of charge. So I'll encourage you to scan the QR code on your screen and make sure that you don't miss out on the June, July, August 2024 issue of the Caribbean TCB, which will be released no later than tomorrow on the Caribbean Regional Climate Center's website. You see the link to the website there. I know CTU and CHTA also make an effort to release the Caribbean TCB on their own platforms. So you can also monitor the CTU and CHTA websites and social media platforms. And colleagues, we look forward to you accessing this very important resource. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Roché Mahon and Dr. Cedric Van Meerbeeck. Next up, we have Frank Comito from CHTA and CAST, the advisor for both. Frank, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Natalia. I'm going to be fairly quick. And by the way, those insights from Cedric and Roché were just fantastic. And I encourage everyone to tap into the quarterly bulletins. The forecasting tools are excellent. I'm going to share with you briefly some of the crisis readiness tools and support information that exists on CHTA's and CTO's websites, and take you right through that. starting with CHTA on our website. You'll have access to this presentation, all the presentations we'll be sending out later following this, and you'll be able to link to the actual resources that we're listing here as well. So mention was made earlier about the CTO CHTA with the support of the OAS Hurricane Preparedness Manual that's been updated several times over the years. That's available online. It has great relevance, steps you through all the practical kinds of things. CHTA also had developed a number of years ago hurricane cancellation guidelines for canceling under various circumstances, and those guidelines have been adopted into policy by numerous national hotel and tourism associations throughout the region. They exist as well for you to review and see how it reflects with your own company guidelines as well. We also had developed something a little, which is a forerunner to what you're going to hear about a little later today, but a very fundamental crisis communications guide, which is online, and it provides some excellent advice. The tools that you'll be hearing about today go in a bit more in depth than this does, but it's a great primer for you. We have a business continuity planning kind of outline of the elements for business continuity planning developed with our partner Tropical Shipping. Had developed that a number of years ago and has presented it on several webinars, and that's worth looking at for business continuity planning and how do you rebound as quickly as possible for some of the comments that Nicola made earlier. Insurance is a key thing for companies to address and to be aware that where they're at with their policies. Are they covering all the right kinds of things? And one of our partners, Smith Orloff and Associates, Stan Smith, has developed a readiness guide, and that's online. It's a 4-page primer for you to make sure that your own policies are covering everything, and also provide you some advice on what you need to do in readiness and response to address some of the insurance-related matters as quickly and effectively as possible. And we also have a member benefit for CHTA members, which Stan Smith from Smith Orloff and Associates provides some review and basic counseling, and Stan's always available for support that way. On CHTA's website, they take more of a destination kind of look, and some of the tools that are there and guides that are there basically can help you at a destination level, hotel and tourism associations, national tourism associations, tourism boards, and so on. But also some of this has relevance and is worth a look at the company level as well to see how you dovetail with this, how you collaborate, where points of collaboration should be, and so on. So there's a number of manuals and guides that are all linked through CTO's website here that you can access and draw from. And finally, we list some of the partner and support resources that are available for you as well for tracking. The top 2 bullets there. So there's some great information on FEMA's website as well, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And a lot of that is, you should also tap into your local Emergency Management Association's website, or a CEDEMA website as well. And there's some additional information, insights, and resources that are there as well. And we had mentioned already the CIMH resources, and we really encourage people to tap into that. And really, particularly because of what Cedric was mentioning earlier about the health threats that we're facing, this is going to be an emerging new kind of threat level, and really is going to have to require us to pay greater attention to the policies, practices, and protocols around reducing the impact of heat-related illnesses and stroke and so on. So that requires some added attention as we're looking at some record-breaking heat situations now, and we want to protect employees and guests as much as possible. So that's an overview of some of the resources that are available for you, and we hope you tap into them. They're available at no cost to our members and so on, and many of these are in the public good arena as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. As Frank mentioned, all of that will be available to you. We'll send that out after the webinar, so you'll get all the links and you can access all those resources. We'll also be providing a recording of the webinar, which was one of the questions already asked. So asked and answered. Next up, we have Dr. Laura Lee Boodram from CARFA, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, and she's going to talk about the health safety resources. Go ahead.
Sorry, yes, just 1 second, please.
Okay. We can see your presentation.
Okay, thanks. Okay, can you just verify you're seeing one slide, please?
Yes, we are seeing a presentation for only us.
Okay, thanks, Natalia.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, so good morning to all the attendees this morning. I'm just going to give a brief overview on hurricane preparedness for 2024 in the context of health and tourism. Right, so I'm sure my colleague Cedric and Roché from CIMH, they would have already given you the Atlantic hurricane season forecast. But I think what we do have to be mindful of is that, as mentioned, the Caribbean is particularly susceptible or vulnerable to extreme storms. And with climate change, we're seeing more and more of those, especially within the last decade or so. The last major Category 5 storm we had was Hurricane Dorian, which would have affected some of the Bahamas Islands. And of course, the economic impact from those storms is quite significant in the billions in terms of loss of lives, infrastructure, etc., and also, economic impact and future projections in terms of revenue earning. So what we typically see, of course, are structural damages to homes, businesses, or hotel establishments, schools, health centers, hospitals. We see significant levels of flooding, and very importantly, what we observe is loss of shelter, communications, electricity, refrigeration, safe water, and food supplies. So when we really think about the health impact of hurricanes, what we can observe, depending on where the storm hits and it's most intense, we could see a reduction in terms of medical care and services that are being provided. We do tend to note an increase in the frequency or the incidence of food, water, and vector-borne diseases. Most definitely, there are physical injuries and loss of life. And then, of course, there's the mental health aspect of the victims who are affected by hurricanes, as well as the first aid and humanitarian responders. So when we look at and we think about potential response areas for hurricane impact, of course, we have disaster relief and recovery operations. We need to consider evacuation operations and protocol, search and rescue as well. If we do have to evacuate, shelter management is key. Supporting shelter management, of course, we need to have the appropriate medical support, isolation requirements if needed for ill persons, humanitarian assistance, relief, and food and water distribution, and very importantly, food and water safety. So on an individual level, some of the things that we do have to consider in terms of maintaining personal health measures. In the aftermath of hurricanes and floods, we do face certain chemical, physical, as well as biological hazards. Should there be down power lines, etc., we may be facing electrical burns, physical injuries. We may see more vehicular accidents, falls, etc. Definitely, we're going to see an uptick in terms of food and waterborne diseases. So most frequently, we'll notice an increasing number of cases of gastroenteritis, as well as leptospirosis, which is spread by carriers such as rats. And then, of course, we have our mosquito-borne diseases, dengue, chikungunya, and Zika, that we see an increase in prevalence of. Some of the things that we can do, just make sure, as we would have said before, have contact information on hand, especially for emergency medical services and responders. Water is going to be a critical factor, and it's important to practice good hygiene post these events. Sometimes a little hard to do depending on the availability of water, but with the water supplies that we do have, we do need to attempt to boil or treat them with chlorination tablets, and of course, do not consume potential flood contaminated food products. For individuals who have chronic medical conditions, we need to ensure that they're stocked up and we have appropriate protective wear when needed. In terms of health considerations for tourism establishments, of course, considering there could be impact on the actual physical buildings, we need to attempt to secure the physical infrastructure where and when possible, reinforce windows, roofs, etc. Of course, have your evacuation plan in place. And of course, this is done with your National Disaster Office. Post-storms, however, and in part of the recovery process, we need to ensure that we source food appropriately, make sure that they were not necessarily from the crop or flood damaged portion, maintain sufficient stores of water, but also ensure those water supplies are safe. And very importantly, post-flooding events, monitor facility premises to ensure potential mosquito breeding sites are removed. Just wanted to close a little bit by mentioning a bit more on the CAFA Tourism and Health Program. This was established in 2014 in conjunction with CTO and CHTA. And it has been a very successful program in terms of promoting healthy, safer tourism within the Caribbean. And this is really a very innovative and a multi-sectoral enterprise involving the different sectors. And what we do hope to achieve, and we have been seeing over the years since this program has been implemented, is that we're seeing less adverse public health events within our tourism establishments. We have been promoting a healthier, safer tourism product. We've been actively monitoring the health of visitors, both at tourism facilities and elsewhere. And we've been trying to work with our hotels to promote food safety handling, environmental sanitation, etc. So all of this has really enhanced the marketability of the Caribbean tourism product. Some of the measures that we put in place are enhanced health surveillance monitoring, especially through our tourism and health information system. And basically, these are our hotel establishment and other tourism entities. They've signed on board to report any illnesses that occur within the establishments. And this is really important because the earlier we detect, the earlier we can respond and prevent more persons from becoming ill. Right. CAFA, through its tourism and health program, also has established the health assurance stamp for healthier, safer tourism, and our tourism entities on following certain measures, for example, reporting through our tourism and health information system, attending training, and following other measures, they can actually become the recipient of this HSE stamp. And I have personally actually seen quite a few of our entities within the Caribbean, our tourism entities, proudly displaying their tourism stamp. Okay, the last thing I just wanted to close on, and this is both for tourism facilities as well as individual travelers to the Caribbean. We also have our Caribbean Travelers Health app, and this is where you can see hotels that are registered through the HST initiative. We also promote health advice, alerts, etc., prevention control measures for different diseases, etc. So I do encourage you to look at this and upload and use as well. So thank you, and that's it for me.
Thank you so much. And next up, we have Sajil Nazar from Marketplace Excellence, and he's going to give us an introduction to the communications toolkit. As we are 12 minutes left into the webinar, we started a couple of minutes late, so we'll go over on Q&A. But Sajil, if you could run through your presentation in 5 to 7 minutes.
Sure. Can everyone see my screen?
You're good.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you so much first of all, for organizing this, I think, very important seminar. And I would like to thank each and everyone from CTO, the CARFA, and CHTA who contributed to the establishment of the toolkit. There are many players that are on this webinar today and many players behind the scene that contributed to the establishment of the toolkit. So today I'll be presenting the toolkit and just walking you through some of the content that is available on the toolkit. Regarding the information of how the toolkit will be available and where is it hosted right now, we'll get towards that towards the end of the seminar. So the first thing regarding the toolkit, and it was very methodically crafted in a way that all the information is going to be available on the toolkit, but the reading part of the toolkit, we kept it very short, where you can get all the information regarding the toolkit, how to navigate on the toolkit. And in case you want to contact anyone from the key organizations, be that CARFA, CHTA, or CTO, all the information is available on the website. So when you land on the website, the first thing that you'll see is an introduction of the toolkit, what you will find in the toolkit, introduction regarding the contributing organizations, then the use of the toolkit, which has regional tools of the THP, the promotional tools and resources, media relations, social media guide, and resources. And as I said before, it is very methodical that all of these things, you'll be able to go through them between 2 to 5 minutes, and then you can actually download the resource and go through that. Because there are many resources, there are actually a lot of resources that are available on this website, and I'll just walk through them. As I said, for contact information, you will have contact information from CTO organization, key resources from CTO, CARFA, and CHTA available on the website. Now, talking about the resources on the website, all of this information will be presented in a PDF format, and it will be further presented in a downloadable format, editable format that anyone can download and use. So the regional tools of the THP is pretty much what Dr. Laura was speaking about right now, which has information about the core 9 Caribbean tourism and health program components. The promotional tools and resources will provide brand logos, the branding guidelines, and promotional material for partner engagement. The media relationship bit will have sample media advisories, pitch, news releases, examples, guide, and media list. And social media will have CARFA social media handles, CHTA social media handles, and CTO social media handles. Some sample post branded hashtags that are available for you to use, download, edit, and use. For resources, you will have sample save the dates, registration, correspondence letters, and I'll just run through them real quickly so I can just explain each and every one of them in detail. Now, for regional tools of the THP, this is exactly what Dr. Laura was just talking about. These are the 9 key components of the program, and then you will have the Caribbean Traveler Health mobile app also explained on the toolkit and where you can download it from. For the promotional tools and resources, like I said, it will have the logo and the usage of how to use the CARFA logo and the branding guidelines, along with promotional videos to engage the Caribbean tourism partners. Now, these videos are again downloadable, they can be shared. So all of that information will be on the documents that are available on the toolkit. If you look at social media, and the major objective of social media was to increase engagement and awareness. So you can tag the handles at CARFA, you can start engagement with tagging handles at CTO and CHTA. There are sample posts in there that you can just edit the date, edit the content a little bit, and they're ready to go, so you can post them. The communication hashtags have been suggested that are going to be uniform for all of this communication. So anyone and everyone looking for this communication will be able to click on those hashtags, and they'll get all that information wherever this engagement or wherever this communication is on social media. For media relation samples, you will find sample for media advisory, media pitch, news release, templates and examples, and a media contact sheet, which has information for all the media contacts. Last, for resources samples, you will find save the date, register today, correspondence from countries from ministries, Department of Tourism, correspondence to companies from CARFA, correspondence for tourism organizations from CARFA, and correspondence from tourism associations to members. Again, the information will be very easy to edit. So just the date, the name, and everything else is going to be there. If you want to edit further, you can. If you don't want to edit further, you can just change the key information and it's good to go. Right now, the website is live on a domain, but it's not public. The information regarding how to access the website and where it will be available will be communicated further by CTO and CHTA. So I am not going to take much time, as I was told by Natalia, and just show you guys the toolkit. So can you guys still see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen, but we see the presentation. If you want to close out and open the toolkit.
Sure.
There we go.
All right. Can you see the toolkit?
Yeah, yes.
All right. So this is the communication toolkit that was developed. Like I said, this is the first part. This is the navigation bit. This is the use of toolkit, because It is integral to get this information regarding how to navigate through the toolkit and what information is available under what section. Like I said, all the key resources are listed over here, and then you will have the downloadable PDFs that can be downloaded and edited. So this will be available via CARFA and CTO and CHTA. The information will be coming to you after this webinar, but this resource will be available. So thank you so much, and back to Natalia.
Thank you, Sajil. So as he mentioned, that online communications toolkit and all of the resources will be available to CTO and CHTA members on their website, and you'll be receiving communication on that and how to access. And that actually concludes a lot of the presentations that we wanted to show you as it relates to resources. We can now go into Q&A. Frank, I don't know if you wanted to moderate the questions, but we do have one, which says, how worried should we all really be? We get warnings every year and it isn't usually as bad. What makes this year so different? I feel like that's a question for Cedric or Roché. Cedric, Roché?
I'm sorry, I actually missed the question here
The
because I was
question is-
answering another one.
It's okay. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, the question is, how worried should we really be? We get warnings every year and it usually isn't as bad. What makes this year so different?
Yeah, so those are very important and actually could be seen as existential questions. First of all, how worried? I would reformulate it in terms of how prepared should we be? Not how worried should we be, but how prepared should we be? Obviously, there's a limit to how much we can prepare given our financial constraints, our technological, our technology is available to prepare, etc. But there's a lot that can be done. And really what we see is the better prepared we are, the less impacts we actually suffer. So that's the lesson number one. Lesson number two, and that follows from the climate outlooks that I presented, because the Atlantic Ocean has never been this warm, there has never been as much fuel for the hurricanes. That is why the forecasters are all forecasting a really active season. If you have a storm that is brewing and it passes over record warm waters, the storm will take advantage of that if all other factors in the atmosphere are not working against the formation or the strengthening of a storm. That is why we need to really be on our guards for this year and regularly monitor with our Met services, with our disaster management agencies, what are we expecting. And I say regular, that means at the very least, every few days. Now, again, keep in mind the peak of the season is typically from August to mid-October, and that is because then the Atlantic Ocean temperatures are at their warmest. So that is when we do tend to see most of the storm, but there have been major hurricanes happening before that date. So do not let your guard down. That is what I would mention. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. There's a few questions in the chat which have been asked and answered. However, there were two people that raised their hands, Catrice Thomas and Raymond Williams. If you could please ask your question either in the Q&A chat or in the webinar chat. There's two options. Please ask there. Then there was another question from Nancy Drolette. Is donation information included in the toolkit? While it's not included in the communications toolkit, perhaps there's donation information on some of the other resources that have been shared today. If anybody has any insight on that, please raise your hand and let us know. Frank.
Yeah, there is in the other communications guide that I had mentioned in my presentation, there is some guidance on donations. It varies by destination. Some destinations, the government has actually had a good grip on how to handle it. In other destinations, there's been a poor track record with the government side of it. Some areas, the Red Cross will take it on, and other areas, another agency will take it on. So it does vary, but It's certainly something that the industry responds very effectively and quickly with, and we want to continue to be good citizens that way as well.
Great, thank you. One thing to mention, and I think that was a few of the questions that have been in the chat, is that all of these presentations will be shared, as well as all the links, so you'll be able to access these resources. And then the webinar recording will also be shared. So you'll have all of this that you can share with your colleagues if they were unable to attend today's session. Okay, I think those are all the questions that we have here. So I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Charles from CTO to wrap us up. And there we are. Hello, Amanda.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Natalia. I really do commend you on an excellent job hosting today's virtual forum and navigating us through the complexity, right, that we will face as the Atlantic hurricane season advances. So, colleagues, good afternoon. We've heard the dire forecast, and even as we pray for the region to be spared the worst, I recall the words of the CTO Chairman that we should all remain vigilant, focus on preparedness, and of course, with proper planning, we can continue to be resilient. CTO Secretary-General, Mrs. Dona Regis, and Nicola Madden-Greig, CHTA's president, echoed the need for collaboration and partnership during times of crisis. The CTO and CHTA remain committed to working together and collaborating with the regional tourism sector, as well as our partners, the CIMH, the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, CAFA, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, not forgetting CDEMA, that we have a long-standing relationship with, the Caribbean Disaster Management Agency, and our efforts will support the sector towards mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. I remind everyone that, in the words of Dr. Cedric van Meerbeeck, there are various hazards that can impact the region at this time, not only hurricanes, of course, which can be the most devastating. Dr. Mahon at CIMH highlighted the Tourism Climatic Bulletin as an early warning tool, which is published quarterly by CTO, CHTA, and CIMH. And even as we continue to provide tips for response and mitigation in the context of the TCB, we encourage you to continue to follow your national hurricane and weather advisories. We will further advise of the various tools produced by CAFA, and Dr. Laurelie Boodram touched on the health hazards that can be linked to climatic events, including extreme heat and extreme weather conditions. We were provided with an overview of a new crisis toolkit. A key emphasis or objective in producing the toolkit was to ensure that there were templates to support crisis communications. I would like to thank Marketplace Excellence for their efforts in supporting CTO, CHTA, and CAFA in producing this tool. Thank you to Sajil Nisar from MPE for walking us through the tool. I also would like to highlight the various resources that Mr. Frank Comito from CHTA would have mentioned, which are available for free to our member destinations and, of course, tourism businesses. So I encourage all of you, as we will share information on how to access the new crisis communications toolkit, please utilize the resources. You can download the templates, adapt to your destination and business needs, and let's ensure that, you know, we are prepared, we remain vigilant, which will ensure business continuity and speedy recovery to the myriad of hazards that can impact the region and by extension, the regional tourism sector. So in closing today's proceedings, I again thank all of our distinguished panelists for taking the time to share their knowledge and expertise. I would like to thank all of you, our virtual audience, for joining us. And I also say thank you to Ms. Sharon Coward, CTO's IT administrator, for her usual diligence and support for logistics. So we know that the tourism sector is vulnerable to various threats, and let's ensure that preparedness and proper planning linked with crisis communication protocols, including for employees and visitors, form the cornerstone of future tourism planning. Thank you all and stay safe. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, team. Great job.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Bye now.
Thank you for facilitating us, Frank. It was really a pleasure.
That CIM, the data you two